Runway launch competition, which is a really great opportunity. And tonight, I am glad to introduce Carly Yoost, who will be our guest speaker and is a past participant and graduate of the Tech Runway. So Carly founded Child Rescue Coalition, which I'm sure she'll tell you all about, but it's an incredible company with an incredible technology. And when you talk about social impact, it really, really makes an important impact. But beyond that, Carly also has experience not only in founding and in the nonprofit space and social impact, but also corporate experience from being one of the top managers at TLO. So I'm sure she will share all types of information that will be immensely valuable for you. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Carly. Welcome. We are so pleased to have you here tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And I'm excited to present today. I am an FAU graduate and also a Tech Runway graduate, and now have full circle become an FAU Tech Runway mentor. So I'm really excited to still be connected to FAU and be able to present to you guys today. If you don't mind, I kind of wanted to share with you kind of a personal side of the story, just to get started, about how I really even got involved into becoming a CEO at TLO, and then really feeling the weight of on my shoulders of having this important technology that's rescuing and identifying children around the world and identifying predators. And that's when we started Child Rescue Coalition. So maybe the first 20 minutes or so, I'm going to kind of be reading part of my story. And then I'll get into the fun stuff, which is actually going over what we're doing at Child Rescue Coalition, show you some of the technology. And at that point, I'd love to get questions and love to get feedback from you guys as well. So to give you a little bit of background of what Child Rescue Coalition is, we're a nonprofit organization that's located right here in Boca Raton, Florida. And we are dedicated through the use of our technology that we've built within our organization, dedicated to putting a stop to child sexual abuse. And we give this technology free of charge to law enforcement all around the world that tracks and leads to the arrest of dangerous child predators. And so I'll get into that a little bit later. As Kevin mentioned, I was briefly the CEO of TLO, which is actually located right across the street in the Boca Raton Innovative Campus, the Brick Complex. And it was actually my father, Hank Asher's company. TLO is an online investigative tool. Law enforcement uses it, private investigators, insurance companies, journalists. My father was also the founder of Accurant, which was later sold to LexisNexis, and is their Accurant tool that people might be more familiar with. So he was actually coined the father of data fusion. He was the first one that built a capable online database, searchable database for investigators and different kind of industries to be able to use this technology. So it was actually when he passed away, which was in 2013, that suddenly our life was changed completely in a moment's notice. And it was my sister and I that stepped in and led that company for a year. But it was honestly one of the most difficult years of my life. And I wanted to just read a little bit of something that I wrote down, kind of detailing that year and kind of how it all got started. So first off, I just want to say that I'm really honored to be speaking to this group. A huge connection to FAU. It's also, yesterday was International Women's Day. And I think that my story and what we went through at TLO really was inspiring about how strong women made us able to pull together and fight for what we believed in, and fight for our family and really give us the strength to do what we did. So I wanted to give you just kind of a behind the scenes story of what was going on. The story of two girls fighting for a family, fighting to save a company, and the legacy that their father built, riddled by greed and more lawsuits and attacks that you would believe. Also, something that we saw for the first time was almost a sexist treatment towards my sister and I trying to step into this company. There were people, when my father passed away, that became very greedy. They saw that this technology was valuable and that he was out of the picture. They wanted to step in and take it for themselves. And for two girls to get in the way of what they wanted really bothered these guys. And in the end, that is exactly what we did. We got in their way and we were able to win what we were fighting for. So I don't want to come across that I'm not grateful or fortunate for the life that I've been given and the privilege of my life that I've been given. It really is what was able for me to pursue really following my dreams and doing what was right instead of just chasing the highest salary. But it wasn't always this way growing up. My father had built a lot of successful companies. He lived so big and so generously that we went from really wealthy to broke so many times that you can't even believe. In fact, I remember my father building his first company, Database Technologies, when we lived in a 1-bedroom efficiency with 2 sofas as the bedrooms. And my mom slept in one, my dad slept in the other. They were actually divorced at the time. And at the table there is where he built his first tool. But it really is kind of that experience of living at both sides that made me really want to appreciate what I have and appreciate giving back and being able to help others do what they do. So some of the ways that when my sister and I stepped in, that we felt like, 2 women stepping in trying to fight for something that they believed in, we're a little bit treated differently than maybe 2 sons would have been treated. So actually, I remember the first kind of week or so, someone at the company, meanwhile, all of the employees really rallied behind us, loved that we were there, loved my father. But there was one person who said, maybe you should just stick to planning our annual Christmas party. You'd be good at event planning, and maybe that's your role you should stick in. And maybe you would rather be at home having pups, is what he referred to me, like getting pregnant and having babies. And I said, no, my role, I know my role, and it's owner. And that's what we're going to go in and we're going to fight for this. And it really is what we did. So how this all happened. So it was very suddenly and unexpectedly on January 11th, 2013, my father passed away actually of a pulmonary embolism. So it was really unexpected. We had no idea, no time to plan. And we immediately felt like we were at war. And this really was because we were at war. And my biggest soldier, my biggest fighter, who I'd always been kind of shielded behind, was no longer there. And I was at the front of the line to fight for myself. Actually, a friend of mine who worked within the company actually said to me, she said, losing a parent is like getting, it's like having a crack in your armor. And it's exactly what it felt like. But instead of having a crack in your armor, I felt like I had none. And for the first time in my life, I was on the front line, and it was me and my sister not being shielded by anyone. It was a scary feeling. And even though my father was a brilliant man, the father of data fusion, built all these brilliant technology companies, there was no plan and set when he died. We didn't have a playbook or a plan for us to step in as CEOs. We had a lot of outsiders who would have liked to have seen that not happen. And let me paint a picture for you too of what those financial times of the company looked like. We had, at the time that my father passed away, TLO was really in the startup phase. He had built something great, and it hadn't yet launched to have the revenue coming in that it would have in the next few years. So there was, the day we stepped in, we had over $100 million in debt. The company was losing $3 million a month, and we only had $3 million in the bank. So very short window of time to figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. So actually later on, I'll get into it, but we actually filed a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is a scary term that can be, people look down or don't want to think about that, but it was absolutely what saved us. We were able to, get into this later, but renegotiate everything, really turn something that was our family's legacy into a big success. And the bankruptcy also created oversight. So people couldn't take advantage of the situation like they wanted to. And we were also able to renegotiate contracts and do really well. So at the time of losing $3 million a month, only having $3 million in the bank, people were telling us to shut the doors down, to sell the desks, sell the computers. But other people that were out there, they saw something that was valuable. And instead of wanting to help, they wanted to steal it. So we realized quickly we would have to force our way into the company to make sure that it wasn't stolen from us. If we had done what was easy and just stayed home and seen how things kind of shook out with the company, I'm certain that we would have had 0% stake in that company. So it really was my sister and I stepping in saying, no, we're fighting for what we believe is right and what we believe is ours to fight for. And so what I wanted to talk about too was that now before my father passed away, we were referred to by the employees as the girls, really because we were my dad's girls. We were girls to him. I was pretty young at the time, just turned 30. And it was almost a term of endearment. And the employees still referred to us that way in a nice and loving way. But it was actually these outsiders and these billionaire people who wanted to come in and take advantage of the situation, who started using that term in a negative way, almost, degrading. Oh, the girls this, the girls that, even referring to us in open bankruptcy court as just the girls. And it was actually a powerful day for me when the Judge Hyman, who was our bankruptcy judge here in South Florida, actually stepped in and said, if you refer to them as that anymore, I'm going to kick you out of the courtroom. And these are women, and refer to them in the proper form. And I had a lot of respect for him and really appreciated him sticking up for us in a way. So just to give you some background too of who these people were and how they were trying to take advantage of the company, these were real industry veterans who had billions of dollars, who my father had given them shares in the company for what he hoped would be them sitting on his board to bring clout and recognition to the board. What we later found out through discovery and emails was actually they had no intention of ever serving on the board. And we actually saw emails that said the only thing less desirable than sitting on a board with Hank Asher would be sitting on a board with two girl versions of Hank Asher, referring to us. So really, they taught us a big lesson of what the epitome of greed is. They even filed a lawsuit for us to reimburse their private jet planes when they flew down for my father's service. And it was actually at my father's funeral where the son was actually saying to me, I can't wait till your company TLO and my company join forces to be this great company today. And I remember not having no idea what he was even talking about, but learned that was their plan all along, was that these guys saw that this company would have been prime and perfect for their two sons to run when they didn't really have any money into the company, didn't found it, and really just saw us in their way of the deal. There was also another person who came in right after my father passed away to offer us what seemed like a great deal at the time. He was going to pay $12 million to fund us out of the bankruptcy. And even our lawyers were saying that this deal was just too good to be true. And it was the night before that deal happened, the night before we filed bankruptcy. He actually changed the deal to a third of the money and full control of the company. and changed it in the very last moment. Knowing his reputation and a lot more about him from years prior, we kind of were prepared for him to do this to us and not be as great of a guy as he was pretending to be. And so what we did, we prepared for it, and we decided we're going to fund this ourselves. So at this point, we had to go to the bank, take out lines of credit. We invested 80% of the money that we had to be investors into TLO. We were able to put together family money of $6 million to fund it through the Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And it was really the best decision we ever made. I mean, it was frightening at the time to think we could be completely broke at the end of this. But turning down that guy who changed the plan, pulled, the rug out from underneath us at the last minute, ended up being the best deal we could have ever made for our lives. And actually, we filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy the next day, and that guy called me screaming, furious, so loud, saying, "How could you do this? How could you file bankruptcy?" And we said, "What do you mean? You were at all the meetings. You knew the date we were filing. You were supposed to be funding all of it." And then he screamed, "But I never thought you would do it without me." And it really was that. He read the situation wrong. He thought we would take whatever crappy deal that he offered us. And unfortunately, he read us wrong, because my sister and I when he made one of the worst deals of his life, we made one of the best. And actually, it was a friend of ours that said, "I think that that all the men were trying to out king each other, that they forgot about the queens." And so we were able to, with all the support from the employees rallying behind us, wanting us to be the ones to move this forward, be really successful. So in spite of all these frivolous lawsuits and worrying about cash needs of the company on a daily basis, I mean me and my sister and the whole entire 140 employees were able to increase sales by 140% that year, decreased losses from that $3 million a month down to $500,000. We successfully negotiated $45 million of the $100 million debt, decreased our footprint and our lease by 2/3, and successfully led the company through due diligence and the ultimate sale to TransUnion for $154 million. So we were really proud of ourselves. We did it, we won for our dad's legacy, for the TLO customers, for 140 employees and their families, and our own personal success. So how did we do it? We fought for what was right. We were on the right side of the law. We stood up for what we believed in, and we didn't passively let anyone take it from us. We also learned everything in and out. We knew the TLO product really well, but we certainly weren't equipped to be CEOs at that time. But we sure as hell came in and learned everything that we needed to know. The people fighting us had way more experience, way more money behind them, industry knowledge, but it's almost like they didn't take the time to learn what was really going on. They didn't understand the bankruptcy filings, and they just paid their fancy lawyers to continue to fight us without really having a full picture of what was happening. And so I firmly believe that a mixture of working 100 times harder, being underestimated, being on the right side of the law, and it really felt like my dad was still fighting in our corner, which is what allowed us to win. And the most exciting part of it all is when I knew we were faced with having to sell TLO, and fortunately to a wonderful company like TransUnion that was actually willing to pay good money for it. I didn't want to let it all go. It was so much we had fought for and so much that was part of us and my family that I said, I want to keep CPS technology, which is the core technology of Child Rescue Coalition. It was the department of TLO that was the philanthropic, feel-good part of the organization that was protecting children and was able to identify these predators. And so I negotiated with TransUnion that after the purchase, they would transfer that whole department to me and solely own the technology to be able to start Child Rescue Coalition and do what I've always wanted to do, which is that. So now instead of fighting greedy a-holes, I fight pedophiles on a daily basis, which is a lot more rewarding. It's actually easier to do. And actually in the nonprofit world, it's crazy because you are celebrated being a woman. It's actually over 50% of CEOs in the nonprofit world are female. And we do have great men on our team who have law enforcement experience, amazing, wonderful, knowledgeable men. And it's interesting when I do a news story, they want the woman's voice telling the story. So it's really quite a difference that we saw from the for-profit world to the nonprofit world. And at Child Rescue Coalition, we have been extremely successful. When I transitioned it, we didn't have one donor, we didn't have one grant or any kind of funders. So this was all being funded by TLO before. So we really needed to break out and create the brand, show the community how much we are doing to make a difference and really get ourselves out there. And so we've really just been able to move this full steam ahead. And so in a minute, I'll show you guys some of the technology that we have. But to talk about some of the success that we've had at Child Rescue Coalition since transitioning this to a nonprofit. We went from roughly officers in 20 countries at the time to now we have trained officers in over 96 countries around the world. We have arrested over 12,000 child predators. And about the time when we started the nonprofit, we had about 4,000 trained investigators. We now have over 12,000. In 2015, we became part of the Tech Runway program where Kevin was one of my instructor for the class and has been a great resource for us. It was about when I graduated from Tech Runway that I won the L'Oreal Women of Worth competition, which is where they highlight women in charities. And you get to go to New York and you get partnered with a big celebrity. And it was actually when I met Blake Lively, who's continued to be a supporter and an advocate for our cause. So not only Blake Lively, but we've had a lot of other celebrity endorsers. And the most exciting part is they're all free. They do this out of the kindness of their heart. It's not a paid sponsorship, but we've had Blake Lively, Lucy Hale, John Walsh, Elizabeth Smart, and many others. We've grown our social media following to, I think we're over 250,000 followers now. And then I mentioned I was an FAU graduate, but not only that, graduated the FAU Tech Runway, but now I am a mentor in the Tech Runway program. And then I had the honor of last year, President Kelly, presenting me with the FAU President's Distinguished Service Medallion, and actually got to speak at the FAU 2019 graduation, which was just a huge honor. But FAU's been amazing to me. You guys have made introductions to Citrix and Ultimate Software and companies that have given us grants, have sponsored us, have been corporate sponsors. It's been an amazing connection to have. And then just to mention too, even though we're a nonprofit, we have seen amazing success with the amount of donations and grants that we've been receiving. And last year was actually our best year that we've ever had. And we raised just shy of $5 million in 2020. And before I show you a little bit of the technology, I just wanted to just kind of jotted down a few things that I think really helped with the success that we've had at Child Rescue Coalition. One is connections. You know, if you have opportunities like this to be a part of FAU Tech Runway, or even just get mentors in the community, these connections are so valuable. If you can find people who are passionate about the things that you're passionate about as well, and make introductions for you, it really just means the world. And I think that's a big thing. So Child Rescue Coalition is a nonprofit. We have a very wonderful cause that a lot of people want to get behind. But I think you need to, as any kind of entrepreneur, find what your story is. What is your cause or your mission that can make people feel good about it? Even if it's, you know, selling something that you think doesn't necessarily have this great mission or cause. I think everybody can have a story that people really want to get behind. And then also, don't be afraid to ask for free things. We do it all the time. We want you know, someone to share something on social. Just you ask people enough, and it's amazing how much people are willing to do it and willing to share the work that you're doing and be part of spreading the message. And then lastly is that if you are in a position where you're working and you don't see a way to the top, or you don't think anyone's going to put you there, is just to create it yourself. So there's not necessarily, you know, someone willing to put everyone at the top of a certain industry. So if you can't get there, try to build something yourself where you can put yourself there, because not always is someone going to do it for you. And with that, I wanted to show some of the technology. So Kevin, should I just share my screen?
I think so, unless Sean jumps in and tells us something different. You can go ahead and give that a try, and I'll just thank you for sharing your both personal and professional story and sharing some lessons you've learned along the way. I'm sure that $3 million burn rate with $3 million in the bank can resonate with some of our entrepreneurs, though probably with a few less zeros.
It was frightening at the time for sure. Yeah, so I'll share my screen and I'll show you guys some of Child Rescue Coalition's technology. And then yes, please, if you have questions, do I need to be reading them from here?
No, I'll probably summarize them and
Okay.
do something, you know, instead of just standing here.
Okay, let me know if questions pop up, because
you got it.
All right, so you guys see my screen?
We've got it.
All right, cool. All right, so I mentioned before, Child Rescue Coalition, our mission statement is protecting innocence through technology, and we are dedicated to preventing child sexual abuse by identifying these dangerous predators and actually leading to the arrest of these child predators. So I mentioned before, we have now arrested over 12,957 predators, and that's actually known to us. So when an investigator uses our tool, they're able to go into our system and flag and tell us that an IP address has been arrested, and that individual has been put in jail. So we even think this number is underreported, because not always do law enforcement close that loop to give us that information. So we hope it's even bigger than what we know of. We have, through that, led to the rescue of over 2,900 children, and prevented thousands of children from being victimized. So by putting one of these predators behind bars, it really puts a stop to future abuse. So actually, one predator goes on to abuse 50 to 150 victims in the course of their lifetime. So by putting a stop to one of them, you're preventing, you know, many, many children from future victimization. So here you're looking at our map. This is actually our real-time map, which shows the data that goes into our system. So I just wanted to start it and show you guys that in a quick amount of time, you're going to see dots really filling up this picture, this map. And what these dots represent is a computer that's online at this very moment that's trading child sexual abuse material. So the legal definition of that would be an image that displays nudity or sexual abuse of children under the age of 18. And we actually go to a further threshold than even the law does. We're actually looking for children 12 and younger, so visually prepubescent children. And what a common question that people have is what the different colors are representing here. So this is actually, we monitor many different networks. So we're not website based. The majority of child sexual abuse material is traded on underground peer-to-peer networks and file sharing networks. And that is where our tool sits and where we're monitoring. So the different colors represent where that lead is coming in from and where we know that that one predator is getting their files. So I mentioned that the victims are 12 and younger. So what the dots also represent, these are a computer that's online right at this second, that they're in possession of one of these illegal images. And not only are they in possession of it and viewing it, but they're also making it available for distribution. So they're both possessing and distributing these files. And so every single file that they're in possession of, if they have one, that's one felony. If they have 30, that's 30 individual felonies that they're committing. What we often see is most of them do not have one file. They have hundreds, if not thousands of files that they're trading. So we're able to give investigators even bigger of a picture than this, where we can drill down and show them, oops. Sorry, one second, guys. So we're able to drill down and give them a full, a lot more details about each subject. So if I go into this worst target list here in the state of Florida in the last year, let's say, I'm able to see exactly how many computers or unique IP addresses that we've seen trading this child sexual abuse material. And so in the last year in Florida, we've seen 2,317 individual computers that have been committing a felony by trading this kind of material. We rank them in order. So if you see all these IP addresses here, we're triaging for the investigators of who's trading the most files. You can see this top target here in Miami has over 6,000 individual child notable images. And to us, we define a child notable as being that 12 and under category. So this person is committing 6,465 individual felonies. We also show them other indicators. So this I and the S, they can be things like fantasy-based stories or even grooming manuals and grooming material, which teach predators how to gain access to children, how to avoid detection. And we find it highly suspicious, and we like to point it out to investigators. So this top target here in Jacksonville has over 5,000 illegal images that they're trading, and 2 of these grooming documents that's basically teaching them how to be a better predator and how to gain access to children. So we like to point that out to investigators so that they know that they could be more likely to be a hands-on abuser of a child.
So one of the questions that came up that might be related to that in the chat is if there is any overlap or any examples of this having a direct impact on child trafficking and those type of rings or activities.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's a lot of times what you hear is people talking about trafficking, which is obviously a horrific problem and I think is very much connected to the work that we do and the problem of child exploitation in general. So the ways that we're connected is oftentimes when a child is trafficked, and if they're taken to trafficked in the United States, or maybe someone travels with sex tourism to travel to a country where they can go to a brothel of an underage child. Oftentimes these predators will take videos and images of that abuse and will actually post them on these networks. So a lot of the files that we're tracking are those of human trafficking victims. I also like to say that I believe by the predators that we're identifying, that we're working towards cutting into the demand of trafficking. You know, if we can reduce the amount of people that are out there who are showing us that they have an interest in children sexually, you're fighting towards that demand of child victims, decreasing that demand. Also, the number one indicator that someone could be trafficked and primed to be trafficked later in life is that they experienced early childhood sexual abuse. And that's at the core exactly what we're fighting. We're fighting to stop child sexual abuse. So we really do hope that we're making a difference in trafficking as well. And thank you for the question. Great question. Keep them coming. Here, I just wanted to pull up before we get to the next question, was I showed you before the whole state of Florida. So now what we're looking at here is Palm Beach County. And what I want you to notice is all of these IP addresses that are in red with a badge next to them are actually IP addresses that have been flagged and have either been arrested or about to be arrested any moment now. So if they haven't been arrested, there's probably going to be an officer knocking on their door very shortly. And the positive thing here is in Palm Beach County, they go after almost every target that pops up into our system. So very proactive. We love the work that Florida in general does against child predators. They take it very seriously here. I think I pulled a target up. Let me see. So if I click on one of those IP addresses, it gives a lot more content. So the officer is able to see the full IP address of that individual. We track every file that they're trading on these public peer-to-peer networks, where this child notable, this person in Lake Worth, has 194 of that 12 and under child, but then they also have other categories like age difficult, which is probably still illegal, but it's harder to tell. It's probably that 12 to 18 range. And then even adult images, which we're not interested in, but we display to the investigator to show them how much of what they have on these networks relates to child exploitation. Another interesting thing we're able to do is tie all of their IP addresses together. So let's say that offender goes and takes their laptop and they're doing this kind of illegal activity at a coffee shop. And then they travel for work to New York and they take their laptop and then they're doing it at the office and at their house. We would actually tie those all together as one individual user and show the officer all of those associated IPs of all the places where that person has been. If I clicked on here, which I'm not going to, it would actually pop up the networks that they're trading these files, and it would actually show you the file names as they exist on the predator's device, which will show you age ranges and gender preferences, and is often pretty gruesome too. Luckily, we never have to view the content, but even the descriptions and the titles are pretty too detailed for me to show today.
So one of the questions sort of related to that, are there, particular ages or characteristics that stand out? And then on the other side, I imagine either you or certainly law enforcement, when I say you, I mean Child Rescue Coalition, or certainly law enforcement has probably developed some expertise in terms of things that children might be should be maybe looking out for or cautious of? Do you do any types of education in schools or programs like that?
Yes, we do. So we try to do a lot of prevention through awareness and educating parents. And even we've done some events that are geared towards children as well, where we try to just talk in a nice way, not to scare children or be too detailed, but how to really be safe online and what to look out for. So our website, childrescuecoalition.org, we have a whole educate section of our website that can teach parents and people who are interested in learning safety tips. And then for the parents, some of the things that we say to look out for is, are they going to certain chat rooms that you don't know about, knowing that if it's a device that you gave them, a cell phone, a computer, you do have the right to be checking into who they're communicating with, make sure that it's not unknown people. But also, are they receiving maybe long distance phone calls from an unknown number, or gifts in the mail from someone that would be unusual? Also, a change in behavior can indicate that something has happened. And really kind of having those open and honest conversations, even starting from an early age. I've got 2 young kids, and we talk about that there's tricky people online who are tricky, and they want to, maybe pretend to be someone that they're not. So you can't trust these people. They're not your friends. It's not the same as real life in-person friends. And then obviously, as they get older, having more serious conversations about what they should do when they are approached by someone, because it's probably not a matter of if, but when, and making sure that they're prepared to do the right thing, to tell an adult, say what it is that they saw, and be open and have those open lines of communication. And if you don't mind, I'll just finish this, which would be 1 minute, and then I can take us out of presenter mode. But I wanted to, so I talked about the IP addresses, sorry. But also these keywords here. So we actually capture what the predator is typing into these networks to get the images that they want. So this person typed in 12 years old. Oftentimes we see as young as 3 years old, 5 years old being searched. This here, this PTHC is a common acronym that predators, it's almost like they've learned their own language. That is a common one, that it stands for preteen hardcore. And it's an acronym that these predators learn to gain access to this kind of material. So what I wanted to quickly show you was we provide an approximation of where this person lives. So we're able to do this through geolocation of IP addresses. And so we can't pinpoint on a house, but what we do is we show the investigator that this is a Comcast cable user, that they live in Lake Worth. We give them their exact IP address and the exact dates and times that they were trading this material. So what the officer does is issue a subpoena to Comcast Cable, and the next day or two, they'll actually receive the exact name and location of that individual to go on and make the arrest of that person. And then that's really it. So I wanted to stop sharing. Here we go. Did that work?
Yep, and that is great. So I've got a couple of questions coming in. Dan, you asked the type of question that I might typically ask, which is, do you just serve explicitly public entities, or is there another part of the business that serves private groups, sort of hinting at, what I always love to focus on is a business model and maybe a revenue generating engine as opposed to the nonprofit?
Yeah, great question. So that was something that I really wanted to focus on is knowing that you can never count on a donor or count on a grant that they're going to come in year after year. So let's model this nonprofit as much like a business that we can. So we do have paid contracts where we're selling our data to companies. One of them, I think we can announce it. For years, we weren't supposed to say who they are, but I think they've officially made the shift. So it's care.com is one of our largest babysitting sites that uses our data to screen applicants to make sure that predators aren't applying to be a babysitter and on the same day trading this kind of material. We also have other government contracts that we've been working with certain companies. But definitely we've kind of gone down that path of who can we be selling this to that's outside of law enforcement. We certainly have had lots of conversations with like the Facebooks of the world and see great potential there. We haven't been able to get any kind of contract with them. But definitely the times where we can get paid for our data outside of just giving this free to law enforcement, we really want to do that.
So you answered a little bit of this next question already, which comes from Moises, who also gives you compliments on your amazing achievements. He's curious about collaborating with similar organizations or the federal government. And then I'll even add on top of that, you know, on a global scale. I mean, we'd love to see a day when most of those dots on that map are eliminated on a global scale.
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with both local agencies and large federal agencies. So we do have the FBI, Interpol, Homeland Security, actually trained and using our technology. You talked about internationally. So we do have one of our biggest users, large countries that are really proactive in this is Canada. It's great. They give us funding as well. The United Kingdom have been amazing to want to see advancements in this technology and really for the benefit of the whole world. So paying to make it better. And then we are in 96 countries where we have investigators trained. But the problem, unfortunately, is there's only so many officers that are out there that are dedicated to this type of crime, and greatly outnumber the officers the amount of people who are actually engaged in this kind of criminality. So, you know, we want to get it into more hands. That's why we're working with companies too. It's another way to put a stop to their behavior outside of just arresting them all, which is probably impossible to do.